Director Wray, to the best of your understanding, how close did the assassin's bullet come to killing President Trump?
My understanding is that either it or some shrapnel is what grazed his ear. So I don't know that I have the actual
very
distance.
close, though.
What's that?
Very, very close, you would agree.
Yes.
Is this
Appearance on Dion's Daily Dose does not imply endorsement from or by any candidate or guest. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed by Dion Bergeron, Dion's Daily Dose are his own and do not represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of any guest. Material and information presented for general information purposes only. The Dion's Daily Dose name in all forms and abbreviations are the property of its owners, and its use does not imply endorsement of or opposition to any specific organization, product, or service. If you'd like to support the show, please visit our Patreon at patreon.com/Dion's Daily Dose.
All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to just kind of jump straight into it because we've got quite a bit to cover. I do want to say this real quick. We're going to talk today.
That was weird.
No, I forgot to unmute.
Oh, okay.
The other audio. There we go. One of the things that I found very, very interesting about this is, once again, the dodging, the obfuscation, the refusal to answer basic, direct questions. And before we dig in, I showed you guys the clip right at the beginning of the video. If you missed it, it was Christopher Wray, FBI director, refusing to acknowledge that it was a bullet that went through Trump's ear, despite pictures showing the bullet coming through. But I have something to show you guys. Actually, Donald Trump had something to say on Truth Social about this. And it says, not that anyone doubted it, but in order to rid our country of the political statement put out by the director of the FBI, in between fighting for the safety and security of those burning our American flags, and right now spraying our beautiful limestone monuments in Washington, D.C., this is a picture of the bullet right after piercing my ear. Perhaps FBI Director Christopher Wray will notice there is no shrapnel or glass flying through the ear, only a bloodstained bullet. It's also damaging to the great people that work in the FBI. And Trump has said that. He said the majority of the FBI is made up of good people. Unfortunately, at the top, it's disgustingly corrupt. As the New York Times reported, other bullets came very close. Nobody ever called, even out of curiosity, from the Federal Bureau of Insurrection. Wow, okay. P.S. After the great Supreme Court decision, when are the hunted down J6 hostages going to be released? And when are yesterday's vandals and flag burners going to be put in prison? Now, I'm going to say this, and this is kind of a spicy take and a spicy topic. I don't think people who burn the American flag should be put in prison.
I agree.
It is an expression of speech. It's freedom of speech. The Supreme Court agrees. I can be against it. I can think that, it's icky, but rising to the level of criminality.
No, I don't like it, but
right,
yeah,
exactly. I don't like it when people do it, but all right. So we're going to jump right in here. We've got, like I said, quite a bit to cover, but it is very, very interesting. Some of the statements, some of the happenings. Let's see here. Our first clip here is Jordan from Ohio.
He's the chairman.
The chairman of the Judiciary Committee. Here we go.
Now, Chairman recognized himself for an opening statement. July 13th was a terrible day for America. We all agree spirited debate, fighting for what you believe in, are part of what makes this country the greatest nation in the world. But the First Amendment and robust political debate are not consistent in any way with violence.
Agreed.
What happened in Butler, Pennsylvania was a tragedy that took the life of a good man, Corey Compertor, leaving a wife without a husband and 2 daughters without a father. Others were injured, and of course, former President Trump, by the grace of God, survived the assassination attempt. There are a lot of unanswered questions about the security failures that day, questions about decisions made before the rally, questions about actions during the rally, and questions about statements made after the event concluded. Prior to the rally, why was the president's security detail denied requests for extra resources? Why weren't all the buildings secured? There were a finite number of buildings that needed to be secured. Why wasn't that done? Why was the president allowed to walk out on the stage when there was a suspicious person on the property? During the rally, what exactly happened between 6:09 and 6:14, those critical 5 minutes? We know from briefings from the director and the deputy director at the FBI and other information we've gathered that at 6:09, the shooter was identified on the roof. At 6:10, the counter sniper was notified. Counter sniper teams were notified about the shooter. 6:11, the shooter fired several shots, injuring and killing one person, injuring others. At 6:12, the counter sniper took down the shooter, and at 6:14, President Trump was escorted off the stage by Secret Service agents. We need to know what happened play by play, moment by moment, second by second, the communications that took place, again, during that critical 5 minutes. And then finally, after the rally, why did both the Secret Service and Secretary of Homeland Security, Mayorkas, lie to the American people? July 14th, the day after the attack, Secret Service spokesman Anthony Guglielmi said this, quote, "The assertion that a member of the former president's security team requested additional security resources that the U.S. Secret Service or the Department of Homeland Security rebuffed is absolutely false." The next day, Secretary Mayorkas said, "That is an unequivocally false assertion. We had not received any requests for additional security measures that were rebuffed." But 5 days later, top officials repeatedly rejected requests from Donald Trump's security detail for more personnel. And on the 21st of July, the New York Times, confirming what the Washington Post reported, said, quote, "Mr. Guglielmi acknowledged that the Secret Service had turned down requests for additional federal security assets for Mr. Trump's detail." 180-degree change. Why did they initially lie to us in the days after the attack in Pennsylvania?
That is an excellent question. So what, and these are some very left-wing partisan news sources. The New York Times, or the Washington Post, they've been exposed, obviously, by this point as being far left. Even they admit that additional security resources were requested and not fulfilled, they were denied. So our next clip is
I know. Yeah. Nadler.
I know. Is Jerry Nadler. Ugh. But the good news is it's not very long. And
Yeah, I made it short.
yeah, 21 minutes to 21:55. Here we go. Oh, but here we go. All right. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, 2 weeks ago, our country witnessed a shocking assassination attempt on a presidential candidate. Now, I disagree with Donald Trump in almost every policy area imaginable. I am frequently shocked and outraged at the plans he has for our country and the words that come out of his mouth. I have dedicated much of the last 8 years to fighting his agenda. But regardless of my strong feelings about Donald Trump's behavior, I unequivocally and unabashedly condemn with every fiber of my being the attempt against his life.
And there's a lot of fibers there.
This was not just an attack on a man, but an attack on our democracy. Political violence erodes the very foundations of our nation. The concepts of freedom of speech, of peaceful transitions of power, of a democratic government at its core.
Look at who is that behind him? Like, blink if you need help, girl. Look at that face.
Oh, I didn't even see it.
These cannot exist
I
if
wonder
political
who
violence is allowed to
she
fester and
works
to
for.
go unchecked.
So that's probably his staff.
Right? Yeah, look. Blink twice if you need help. Oh, my God.
I didn't even notice that.
Right. So I want to say this. First of all, forget Donald Trump. Take Trump himself out of the equation. We had what was the closest to an assassination attempt since Ronald Reagan.
Yep.
Forget how you feel about the candidates, Trump, Biden, any of that. A candidate and a former president was damn near assassinated on live television.
Uh-huh.
How can you say anything other than this is the greatest security failure since Reagan? Period. End of story. I genuinely don't understand. But okay, so the next is 2749 to 2831.
I think it's the swearing in,
Yeah.
the introduction.
Introduce today's witness. The Honorable Christopher Wray has been the director of the FBI since 2017. He previously served as the Assistant Attorney General for the Criminal Division of the Department of Justice, the Principal Associate Deputy Attorney General, and Associate Deputy Attorney General, and as Assistant U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Georgia. Again, Director Wray, you've been here many times. We appreciate you being here today. Look forward to your testimony and answering our questions. We will begin by swearing you in. Would you please rise and raise your right hand?
Thinking we start cutting carbs. I need to drop.
There you go.
Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is true and correct to the best of your knowledge, information, and beliefs, so help you God? Let the record affirm. Let the record reflect that the witness has answered in the affirmative.
Okay, so he just swore an oath
Yep.
to tell the truth under penalty of perjury.
Yep.
Right? Okay. So keep that in mind while we're reviewing these. Okay. So the next clip is 2902 to 3204. This is FBI Director Wray's opening statement.
For so long.
Here we go.
Thank you all for your support of our efforts to protect the American people and uphold the Constitution. I am proud to be here today representing the 38,000 special agents, intelligence analysts, and professional staff who make up the FBI, men and women who every day work relentlessly to counter the most complex threat environment I've seen in my tenure as FBI director, maybe
38,000.
Yeah.
So the FBI has 38,000 employees. He's not talking about just agents. He's talking about the all overall employees of the FBI, right? Because he said analysts and this and that and the other. It's a lot of people.
That is a lot of people.
It is a lot of people. 38,000 people are employed by the FBI.
in my entire career in law enforcement. Before I go any further, I also want to acknowledge and offer my deepest condolences to the victims of the horrific assassination attempt in Butler County.
I'm going to pause it here because I do want to say one thing that I've been meaning to say. Imagine being the family of Chris Comparatori, right? Yeah. I'm sure I mispronounced his name, Comparatori. Anyway, imagine being his family or a friend of his and hearing all the time what almost happened, what almost happened, what almost happened. I've heard this many times on the mainstream news. What almost happened that day? What almost happened? What came so close to happening that day? Something did happen.
Yeah.
A man lost his life. A hero, by the way, a firefighter, a good man, lost his life, and two other people were seriously injured. That something didn't almost happen. It happened.
Uh-huh.
I would be like just sick if I was this man's family. Like it has to be extremely frustrating and hurtful to hear these people consistently refer to it as something that almost happened to this other individual. Yeah, Trump's the former president. Yeah, in the media, for the mainstream, he's more, quote, important. Trump is not more important to the family of Corey, Comparatori, right? He's not more important to them. I'm sure their son, daughter, husband, father, brother, whatever the connection, friend is more important to them than some man they see on TV. So just keep that in mind when you're referring to the events of January 13th, that someone did lose their life.
I mean, July
June
13th.
Sorry, July 13th. When you refer to J13, okay?
Okay.
July 13th. Yes. When you refer to that, just remember someone did actually lose their life and 2 people were seriously injured. It just something that I had to say because it bugs the hell out of me when I
I thought of that too.
To the friends and family of Corey Comparator, who by all accounts lost his life protecting others from danger. To the other victims, 2 of whom were critically wounded. And of course, to President Trump, former President Trump and his family. As I've said from the beginning, the attempted assassination of the former president was an attack on our democracy and our democratic process, and we will not and do not tolerate political violence of any kind, especially a despicable account of this magnitude. And I want to assure you and the American people that the men and women of the FBI will continue to work tirelessly to get to the bottom of what happened. We are bringing all the resources of the FBI to bear, both criminal and national security. Now, there's a whole lot of work underway and still a lot of work to do, and our understanding of what happened and why will continue to evolve, but we're going to leave no stone unturned. The shooter may be deceased, but the FBI's investigation is very much ongoing. To that point, I also want to acknowledge that I recognize both the congressional and the public interest in this case and the importance of this investigation to the American people. And I understand there are a lot of open questions. So while the investigation is very much ongoing and our assessments of the shooter and his actions continue to evolve, my hope here today is to do my best to provide you with all the information I can, given where we are at this point. I have been saying for some time now that we are living in an elevated threat environment. And tragically, the Butler County assassination attempt is another example, a particularly heinous and very public one, of what I've been talking about. But it also reinforces our need at the FBI and our ongoing commitment to stay focused on the threats, on the mission, and on the people we do the work with and the people we do the work for.
Okay. The words sound good, but as we've seen, the words of these people who appear in front of Congress usually sound pretty good. At least their opening statements do. But then when you actually get into it, it's a different story. Why do I suspect that that's going to be exactly the case here? We shall see. Our next clip is from Representative
The FBI are
Bishop.
doing.
Representative Bishop, Republican from North Carolina, and that's at 3644. By the way, if you want to find this video yourself and review our notes or review the clips that I'm telling you, it is from Forbes, correct?
Yep. Forbes breaking news on YouTube.
Breaking news: Jim Jordan chairs House Judiciary Committee hearing with FBI Director Chris Wray. Show you guys. Let's see. We'll throw ourselves down at the bottom here for those of you who are actually watching. At the top, watch live. Jim Jordan chairs House Judiciary Committee hearing with FBI Director Chris Wray. That's the name of the video if you want to review it later. Okay, so again, Bishop, Republican, North Carolina.
Gentlemen,
I'm way down here.
North Carolina is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Wray, I'm way down here. I appreciate the chairman giving me this because I've got to leave. But let me ask this question. Why doesn't the FBI disclose to the American people all of the investigative detail and evidence that you are gathering as it is gathered?
Well, we have tried to be transparent with both Congress and the American people as we're going along in the investigation, frankly, unusually so for an ongoing investigation, given the sheer nature of it. We have provided a lot of information. I expect to continue to provide information. I expect to be able to provide some additional information here today. in response to your questions and your colleagues. But part of the issue is that, as like in any investigation, as we proceed, facts evolve. Our understanding of what somebody said turns out to have more context that we didn't have before. We have additional leads out there. So part of our goal is not just to respect the ongoing investigation process, but also to make sure that we don't prematurely provide information that then 2 days later turns out to be different than what we told people, because that's very much, kind of a natural part of any investigation.
So did Crooks fire 8 shots?
We have recovered 8 cartridges on the roof.
Now, I want to point something out. Every time he's asked, did Crooks fire X number of rounds? 8 is the going rate, right? Because that's how many shell casings they recovered.
Mhm.
His response, at least every one that I've seen, has been, we recovered X number from the roof. And that's actually pretty smart, because I don't know how they would have any knowledge without aerial of exactly how many shots were fired from that particular weapon. How many shell casings were put there? These are all questions. Am I saying that happened? No, I'm not making any claims, but I got some really good questions at the end of this that I'm going to share with you. Put it this way. Some of the commenters have better questions than these congressmen, but moving on.
Why was Crooks allowed to get off 8 shots?
Well, that I think is something we're still digging into. Again, maybe this is a good place for me to make clear the different investigations that are going on. So, because certainly I understand.
Well, and given that I've only got 3 minutes left, and I know other members, I'm really interested because I appreciate your invitation. You said you're prepared to disclose things as questions are asked. So I don't want to waste time. I just want to get to the questions that might, and as many members as can, ask questions that you'll answer. I actually think I'd be glad for you to go on soliloquy, frankly, and tell us what you know. I think the American people want to know.
Oh, yeah.
Why was President Trump not kept off the stage?
It's a good question.
We don't know the answer to that, but I want to be clear, and this is important because I think it goes to questions that I can and cannot answer. Our investigation, the FBI's mandate, is focused on the shooter and all things related to his attack. Now, obviously, I understand very much the intense interest and focus on the Secret Service's performance, actions, decision-making, et cetera. There are 2 separate after-action reviews, the DHS Inspector General and the outside independent panel that's been convened that are focused on that. Now, our
Everybody
investigation
understands
will
that. Everybody
obviously
understands that,
overlap
Director
with
Wray.
that.
Here's the problem. We're out 13 days, and you say we've been disclosing. We had the director, or the colonel from the Pennsylvania State Police in front of Homeland yesterday. He was.
By the way, I want to inform you guys, we are going to do that video breakdown. We just didn't have time today.
No.
We were
Sometime
planning on
next
doing
week.
both today, but some stuff came up. So, hey, we have to eat, guys. Anyway, no, some stuff did come up, but we didn't get a chance to get to it today. But his next day off, we're going to make sure that we do the breakdown of that, because there are some very interesting things in that particular hearing as well, in my understanding.
Quite candid. He disclosed to us that Butler Emergency Services Unit personnel were posted into the windows on the 2nd floor of the AGR building.
Yeah.
That they left there to go pursue the person that they spotted, Crooks. That they texted a photo of Crooks to the PSP representative in the command center. That information was relayed to the United States Secret Service. They asked that it be texted to someone else. That was many minutes before President Trump took the stand.
Yeah.
What we don't know is why were they not keeping him off the stand? And
My understanding from the little clip that I saw was we're looking at about 58 minutes from the initial reveal. Hey, this guy looks suspicious, to the shots fired. Almost an hour.
Yeah.
That is insane.
That is.
To the extent, I know we always hear when there's a criminal investigation, you got to wait for that to develop. But do you have any reason do you have any other target of your criminal investigation other than Crooks, who's dead?
Good question.
Drinking coffee every day didn't work for me.
I'm not paying YouTube. I'm sorry. There are going to be ads occasionally.
I went from 180.
We are investigating the shooter both to determine his motive and his preparations and activities before the shooting, but also to make sure whether or not there are any co-conspirators, accomplices.
At this
et cetera.
point, have you developed any evidence to so suggest that there are any accomplices or cooperators or assisters?
Not at this time, but again,
Okay.
the investigation's ongoing.
So here's the thing. While we wait, maybe for months, and I hate to say this, I'm not trying to take a pot shot, but the country went for years with the understanding that the Hunter Biden laptop was Russian disinformation as offered by respected former intel officials. And the whole time the FBI had the laptop and then let that happen in public until finally offering testimony in a case.
He's not wrong.
To the degree we wait to hear as a country and as a Congress what has happened in this event, because the FBI is conducting an investigation, it provides quarter for the U.S. Secret Service not perhaps to reckon with the problems that are obvious to everyone. So let's get a couple in while I've got 13 more seconds. One more question, perhaps. Senator Grassley says that the records of the day show that there was a counter unmanned aerial surveillance operator on site. Was there? And why did that person not prevent crooks from being able to use a drone?
So again, questions about the Secret Service's performance are better directed to those other reviews. What I can tell you.
Yeah, if only they would answer.
Yeah.
If only the proper targets of these questions would answer.
When it comes to drones, is that Crooks himself had a drone, and I'm prepared to answer questions here today about the shooter and his use of the drone, for example.
My time's
Okay. All right. Our next clip is 42. Actually, it's right after this, and it is. Oh my God, Shawn Nadler again. No, it's fine. I'm just kidding. Here we go.
He's the ranking
I
member.
know.
Gentleman yields back to ranking members recognized for 5
Here we
minutes.
go.
I don't think I did the whole clip.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I said in my opening statement, political violence is a scourge and entirely.
I will say this before I continue. I will say, at least we got a firm. If you guys, when I played Nadler, to his credit, unequivocally, I can't stand Donald Trump, but I am against political violence. That's what he said. I got to give it to him on that part. However, as you're going to find, both sides, no one side is at fault here. Both sides are using this more for political sound bites than they are to get to the truth, in my opinion.
Yeah. We need to find the
unacceptable,
truth.
no matter
Yeah, that's what it should be all about.
We should know the truth.
the source or the target. Last October, a far-right conspiracy theorist broke into Nancy Pelosi's home and bludgeoned her husband.
Exactly where he started.
Hold on.
Yes.
He's claiming that the individual that Paul Pelosi knew by name was a far-right conspiracy theorist?
That's what his claim. I thought he was a far left guy.
Okay, all right.
But yeah.
Wow, okay. They just continue to twist the facts, don't they?
Republicans mocked the attack and promoted conspiracy theories about it.
I will say this. Some did. Some Republicans, elected officials, I don't know.
No.
I didn't see those. But I will say some on the right rejoiced. And that's never okay.
No,
I
was not one of them.
I was not one of them. I think it was horrendous no matter what. I don't know, but I have mentioned on more than one occasion, this is not the same thing. It's just not. However, that said, political violence of any kind does not belong in the United States of America. Go to
Agreed.
a third world banana republic for that, which...
Use your
Don't get me
voice
started.
and use your vote.
Exactly.
Last August, an armed Utah man who threatened to kill President Biden was killed as FBI agents attempted to serve a warrant on him hours before.
Yeah, and that's another thing. It's interesting how this guy who was posting stuff on Facebook, they assassinated him, straight up killed him. But these actors, actresses, so-called lefty leaders can make all kinds of threats against Trump, and that's okay. That's perfectly fine. Just saying. It's trash. It's trash. I'll say this too. I looked into the story of the guy who made the threats and who the FBI showed up at his house, or the ATF showed up at his house, Secret Service, somebody. There was more to that story. It wasn't, they just showed up and kicked in his door. They made contact. he basically said, come back with a warrant. And they did, and he refused to come out, and it was a whole big thing. It wasn't just he put some threats online, they showed up and assassinated him. But it's not okay.
Before President Biden landed in his state, some on the right claimed that the man was simply a, quote, Second Amendment enthusiast. In recent weeks and months, those on the right have repeatedly called for, quote, civil war, with an Ohio state senator saying that if Republicans lose the election, quote, it's going to take a civil war to save the country, and it will be saved. The president of the Heritage Foundation likewise said that, quote, we are in the process of the Second American Revolution, which will remain bloodless if the left allows it to be, close quote. Director Wray, it's obviously important that we respect First Amendment protections, but there is clearly a point at which some violent rhetoric crosses over into threats of violence or leads to actual violence. Could you describe how the FBI looks at this relationship between rhetoric and action and what you are seeing around the country?
Okay. You know what? Those are actually valid points that he brought up, as much as I detest admitting anything Nadler says is even coherent. However, the reality is the rhetoric has gotten out of control on both sides.
Yeah.
On both sides, because there are those on the left that, like we saw, show up with a bloody Donald Trump head, and that's okay. That's celebrated.
Yeah, that comedian.
Yeah. Well,
Allegedly
yeah.
comedian.
Right. And Madonna making the remarks that she sniper rifle, White House, right? That's okay. Nobody had a problem with that. But when the reverse happens, all of a sudden, Both sides, though, we've really seen a ramp up in rhetoric, calls for violence, things like that. We all need to bring it down a few notches.
So I appreciate the question, and this is an issue that I've been talking about for some time. In our view, there is a right way and a wrong way under the First Amendment to express your views, no matter how passionate or even angry you are. And violence and threats of violence is not the right way.
I agree.
It's not the right way.
We don't care what you're upset about or who you're upset with. When, from the FBI's perspective, when it turns to violence and threats of violence, that's when we have to draw the line. That's when we get engaged. And there is an alarming phenomenon that we've seen over the last several years of that kind of passion and heated rhetoric turning into actual violence and threats of violence. We've seen it against public officials of all sorts. We've seen it against law enforcement.
Yes. And we really, all of us, really need to tamp down. I understand, especially, look, I'm a constitutional Republican, which means I believe very strongly in the Constitution of the United States, and I believe that we've gotten very, very far away from the original intention behind its founding. I think we're under attack from within. However, and I will admit that I believe the stakes of this upcoming election have never been higher.
Yep.
But you can't just threaten to hurt people.
No.
You can't do that. There are laws against that.
Violence is never the answer.
Well, violence is only the answer in self-defense.
Okay.
Sometimes you can't talk your way out of psychopath.
That is true.
You can't. I am all for a civil conversation and talking someone down. I've talked myself out of getting a serious beating on more than one occasion because of my mouth, right? Or jumping into the situations I had no business jumping in. But I was able to talk my way out of it. I always prefer that over the alternative. But when you have somebody kick your door in or you have someone attack you, pretty words aren't going to stop that. Sometimes you need to fight force with force. However, making statements like you're going to do this or you like that, you're getting into a very dangerous area. Our next clip is Jordan, Representative Jim Jordan from Ohio, Republican, obviously, 4835 to 5340. 4835.
Can this number one solar gadget
Sorry. There we go. Okay, here we go. Oh,
Oh, well, we didn't
Tell me,
hear
it's
now.
back, Director, let me go back to where Mr. Bishop was. Tell me about the drone. You act like you wanted to fill us in on that. Fill us in.
yeah, Philson.
You can
Really?
sell this
Seriously?
$5 spatula on Amazon,
I hate YouTube. I
Really?
genuinely detest YouTube.
or
All right.
So we have recovered a drone that the shooter appears to have used. It's being exploited and analyzed by the FBI lab. The drone.
One thing that I do find interesting, right, is his continual reference to Crooks as the shooter, not a shooter or suspect or any of that. He has conclusively said this is the shooter. I thought this was the preliminary stages of the investigation, and we shouldn't jump to any conclusions.
Yeah.
I'm just
Good
saying.
question.
I'm getting.
Drone was recovered in his vehicle. So at the time of the shooting, the drone was in his vehicle with the controller. In addition, our investigation has uncovered.
Do you know what time of day he flew it, and if he flew it on the day of the shot?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So in addition, it appears that around 3:50 p.m., 4 o'clock in that window, on the day of the shooting, that the shooter was flying the drone around the area.
2 hours.
About 11 minutes. I want to be clear, but when I say the area, not over the stage and that part of the area itself, but I would say about 200 yards, give or take, away from that. We think, but we do not know. So again, this is one of these things that's qualified because.
So around the area where he ended up taking the shots from, allegedly, right?
Yeah.
Of our ongoing review, that he was live streaming, viewing the footage from that, again, about 11 minutes in around the 3:50, 4 o'clock p.m. range.
2 hours before, he's flying a drone in the vicinity of the route.
About 200 yards away, yes.
200 yards. Okay, that's important information. What about the bombs that we've heard about in the shooter's car?
So again, the FBI lab is exploiting those explosive devices.
Yep.
There were, we've recovered 3 devices, 2 in his vehicle and 1 back in his residence.
Are these what you would call, your experts would call sophisticated operations, or this, I don't know. I that's what I've been told by people who have some understanding of this area.
Yeah, I think it's, we've seen more sophisticated and less. I would say these are relatively, again, keyword relatively crude devices themselves, but they did have the ability to be detonated remotely. And so to that point, in addition to the 2 devices that we recovered out of his vehicle, there were receivers for those 2 explosive devices with the devices. And then on the shooter himself, when he was killed by law enforcement, he had a transmitter with him. Now, I do want to add one important point here, is at the moment, it looks to us, again, ongoing review, and I can't say that too many times. At a moment, it looks like because of the on-off position on the receivers, that if he had tried to detonate those devices from the roof, it would not have worked. But that doesn't mean the explosives weren't dangerous.
And I'm sure we're going to get into all these subjects a little bit later as well.
That is interesting, right? Why? Because who sets up explosives, right, for remote detonation, first of all, and just leaves them in their vehicle when they're going to what they know they're not going to return from? Anytime you go to assassinate a public figure, right? Not like I have a lot of experience with it, but everything, all the reports and everything. Look, anytime you go to do something that high profile, you're not coming back. You have to know that. Like, that's not in question.
Unless he thought that maybe he could escape it and then do the detonation later to try to escape.
I don't know.
Tell us what you can about the encrypted platforms we've heard about.
So one of the things that we're drilling into hard with the shooter in an effort to try to learn more about his state of mind, his motive, his ideology, his context, everything else, is to look at all of his devices, any social media accounts he had, et cetera. And one of the things we've learned in finally getting into his phone, which was also a significant technical challenge from an encryption perspective, but in addition.
And I do want everyone to really think about that, right? To really think about allegedly the top law enforcement administration agency in the world, because the FBI touts themselves as the best of the best of the best, right? Had an inordinate amount of difficulty, which means they really had a hard time getting in this 20-year-old's phone.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't that make anybody suspicious, like, at all?
And they said, I don't know if the clip's coming up or if it's later, but they said that they might never be able to get to that access too.
Yeah, there's definitely some sus stuff here. I'm just saying, what the hell, dude? Like, really? The NSA can tell you what what Xi Jinping had for breakfast, but they can't get in this 20-year-old phone, this 20-year-old's phone, who allegedly had no social media accounts, no nothing. I don't know, man.
Once we got on the phone, it turned out he was using some encrypted messaging application.
And again, the same question relative to the bombs. Was this pretty sophisticated, or is this is the kind of the norm you see with folks like, similar situation? How would you describe
on this subject, I would say.
How many similar situations are we talking here? How many times has the president attempted to be assassinated? I'm just wondering, what similar situation is he referring to exactly? I think he probably could have worded that a little better, but.
This has unfortunately now become very commonplace, and it's a real challenge for not just the FBI, but state and local law enforcement all over the country.
Tell me exactly.
Okay. So he's saying that these apps and these security measures are becoming more and more difficult to break. Okay, that answers a little bit, such as whatever password protection he's using. I think I might need to look up, because I'm just being dumb, but like, that should be at least a little concerning.
Yeah.
Does the scope of your investigation include what I call that critical 5 minutes from when the 6:09, when this is based, I think, on information you've given to Congress, 6:09 when the shooter's identified on the roof, and 6:14 when President Trump is ultimately escorted off, and all that happens, the shots that take place in between there. Do you have access to the communications that were going on at the time in that critical 5 minutes?
So our investigation, when you say scope, our investigation includes that time frame, although focused again on the shooter himself.
Dodge. That's what I call that, because it's a pretty simple question. Do you have access to the communications?
Part of that,
he's obviously involved in that time frame.
Focused again on the shooter himself.
I understand. The shooter's involved in that. He's obviously involved in that time frame.
Correct. And as part of that, as part of our focus, our investigation of the shooter and the attack, of course, we are interviewing law enforcement from the scene, because those are some of the most significant witnesses, and we're obviously getting access to their materials and that kind of thing. And the Secret Service has been fully cooperative.
You have access to the communications that exist there.
That exact question, as I sit here at the moment, I don't know the exact answer to that question, but I know that Secret Service has been cooperative with us.
The Congress would like access to those communications as well. I mean, not just that 5 minutes, although I think that's the critical time frame. There's lots of communications we'd love to have access as well. I see my time is up, and they have called vote.
One thing that I find extremely concerning, and it should be concerning to every American, is allegedly Congress is the highest elected body in the land, on equal with the executive branch, aka president, and the judicial branch, aka the Supreme Court. And they are having trouble getting the answers to important questions and important materials.
Yeah.
These agencies do not serve the American people anymore. They are runaway agencies. Regardless of the side of the aisle you're on, or if you're kind of in the middle, this should concern everyone, that Congress isn't able to do their job and get us the answers that we need, because these agencies are not cooperating. They're not giving them the necessary information. That's a problem. Our next clip, a little bit further down the road, is Representative Lofgren. Lofgren. It's a Democrat from California, and we are at
It's a while.
134.26.
If you're a man who makes at least 100,
YouTube sucks.
will get you shredded like.
Let me just ask a couple of quick questions. First, many of us are interested in the motives of the shooter here.
I think the motive was he wanted to kill Trump. I'm just spitballing. I mean, I'm not sure, obviously, but that's kind of what I'm thinking. No, but I understand what she's saying. What led him to that? What were the other connections there? But
and who he was working with, if there was anybody else.
I find it very suspicious that someone 20-year-old, rather unsophisticated individual, not member of, like, no formal military training, no formal intelligence training, no formal that we know of, was able to do what he did, and he had no help whatsoever.
You know, when it's an assault on a political figure, you immediately assume there's a political motive, and that may be the case here. We don't know yet. True. But I was interested in what you're seeing on his phone. The press has reported that he had pictures not only of Mr. Trump, but of Mr. Biden and various other members, political figures. Can you discern, was there an element of, mainly Republicans, maybe Democrats? Was it all over the board? Can you enlighten us about that?
That's actually a decent question.
Well, this is a place where it's particularly important for me to reiterate the caveat that I've included before, because in this instance in particular, we have a lot of legal process out for additional accounts and things like that that the shooter is associated with. So we're hoping to learn more, and we're still exploiting a number of the digital devices. Right. I think it's fair to say that we do not yet have a clear picture of his motive. And I think it's important for me to explain, because I understand, of course, why everybody wants to know the answers to those questions. Often in an investigation, from interviewing people that the subject was in close contact with, looking at the individual's social media accounts, messages, often things, physical evidence in the person's residence. You might see a manifesto, things like that. We're not seeing that yet, but we are digging in hard because this is one of the central questions for us. What I can say is that the shooter appears to have done a lot of searches of public figures in general, but so far we're seeing kind of news articles and things like that. And so the images that have been reported about, really what we're talking about there are when you do a news search of an article, the image appears in the cache as opposed to like a search for that specific individual. But again, I really want to be clear that that's a place that we're doing a lot of work right now.
Okay. I understand what he's trying to say, and that is, yes, there were pictures, but he also had so many article lookups looking at news that often these pictures are cached in the device memory automatically, whether you download them or not. So it goes along with it. Okay. I mean, I understand what he's saying, but once again, he didn't answer the question that was asked, which was there a particular focus? Once again, sidestep. Imagine that. Next clip is the 146.45 mark. And let's see here. We have Congressman Johnson from Georgia, Democrat. Oh boy, prepare yourself.
Gentleman from Georgia is recognized.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being here.
Remember, this is the guy who said, don't everybody go to one side of Guam because it'll tilt and flip over.
Uh-huh.
This guy is an absolute moron. Like, like he was hit with the stupidity stick over and over and over, like he was in the dumb tree and fell down and hit every branch on the way down, like a pinball.
Director Wray. Director Wray, the FBI is the independent law enforcement agency under the Department of Justice. Is that correct?
Yes.
And does the FBI director currently report to anyone?
Well, you mean in a chain of command reporting structure kind of thing? Yeah. So the FBI is part of the Justice Department. On the org chart, you would see that the FBI director, and this has been true for decades, reports to the Deputy Attorney General, who reports to the Attorney General. Obviously, reports in a communication sense, I report to any number of people.
As opposed to a micromanagement reporting system.
Correct.
And you would take issue, would you not, with any proposal that would change or alter that chain of command and place you or place a FBI director in the position of reporting directly to the president? Would you not? You would oppose that?
I don't think that would be a wise reporting structure. I think the structure that we've had for decades now makes sense.
Interesting that it's decades and not centuries, right?
Yeah, because the FBI's been around for 106 years, I think.
Right. Interesting.
I think there's a difference between independence in a sort of organizational structure perspective and independence in terms of the way you do the work. Obviously, the FBI is part of the Justice Department.
Well, reporting directly to the president would eliminate your independence, would it not?
I don't think it would help.
Yeah. And you have...
That's a good answer. Where does the Justice Department fall on executive, legislative, and judicial? Where does it fall?
That's a good question. I think it's second. I think it goes Secretary of State.
Okay.
And then I think it's the Justice Department. The State Department.
Okay.
And then I think it goes the
But the State Department falls under the executive branch, does it not?
Does it?
I mean, they're the ones who appoint.
I think they fall under the executive branch too.
So why wouldn't they report to the president then?
That's a good question.
I mean, I understand what they're saying because we want an independent judiciary. But if the FBI is part of the executive branch, because let's face it, the Attorney General is appointed by the president, answers to the president. Yeah. So if they report to the Attorney General, and they just report to the president, I'm just saying we might skip a step there because we're seeing information not going to where it needs to get to. We saw that constantly in the Trump administration.
It's getting to the reason why I picked this.
Yeah.
There's a reason.
Familiar with Project 2025.
That's why I picked it. That's why I picked it.
I mean, I've seen news reports about it. I'm not particularly familiar with it.
You're aware that it is a game plan for President Trump's first 120 days in office.
So I do want to say this really quickly because this is important. Trump himself has said repeatedly he has no connection with Project 2025. I was excited about Project 2025 because I thought Trump was connected to it. I thought that they were recruiting people to jump in to the Trump administration.
That's
it turns out it's the Heritage Foundation, which is separate. Are they conservative? Yes, allegedly. But they are different than Trump himself.
Trump has said he likes some of the ideas, but some of the ideas he doesn't want to be any part of it.
And I understand they're going to jump on anything they can to try to discredit Trump, do this, do that. But please, ladies and gentlemen, do your research. Learn what this stuff really is.
That's correct.
I'm really not familiar with the details. Again, I've seen reporting about it.
It is. And what he proposes to do is to force the FBI director to report directly to him. That's what he wants to do within the first 120 days. He also wants to eliminate the...
See, you notice it's interesting. He, talking about Trump. Again, the 2025 is not Donald Trump's.
Yeah, Project 2025.
Project 2025, I mean, is not headed by Donald Trump. As a matter of fact, we're going to do a breakdown of Project 2025 at our earliest convenience. But a lot of the people associated with that, in many cases, were never Trumpers and are not friendly as far as the previous Trump administration. So I do find it very interesting. Was this entire thing a setup to try to make Trump look worse for the undecided voters, right? Oh my God, look at the policies that he wants to do. Oh my God, look at this, look at that. It's just a question. It's nothing that's going to get answered right now. But focus on the fact that he keeps saying he talking about Donald Trump in the assumption, once again, Director Wray said, I'm not that familiar with it. I don't have the details. And Johnson proceeded to tell him, oh, what I said was right. There's no question. There's no nothing. And then talks about he, Donald Trump's going to do this. Donald Trump's going to do that. Stop listening to these idiots. This guy thought Guam would flip over. Why would you listen to anything this moron says?
Position of FBI General Counsel. That is also set forth in Project 2025. How would you recommend that?
I think the FBI's Office of General Counsel serves an incredibly important role, including in terms of advising our workforce. We have 38,000 people. The idea of having an organization like ours, an independent law enforcement agency like ours that doesn't have its own general counsel's office doesn't make sense to me.
Well, it would seem like any proposal that would force the director to report to the president, and then there would be no legal counsel for the director of the FBI. That seems like it's an attempt to neuter the.
I'm going to let it play in a minute, but I do want to point this out. Regardless of how you feel about Trump, a former president and a current president, the leading presidential candidate at minimum of one party, right, was almost killed on live TV. And you're worried about Project 2025. These people never cease to amaze me how stupid they are.
FBI and render it accountable only to the president. Isn't that correct?
Well, let me put it this way. I recognize that the FBI director, this FBI director and every FBI director before me serves at the pleasure of the president. And that's part of our system.
Yeah.
I was appointed by President Trump. I respect that. I think that's a part of our structure. But independence in terms of how we do our work is what matters to me. And we need to be able to do our work in a way that is free from political interference.
Well, you wouldn't be able to do that by reporting everything you do to the president and getting his authority and approval before you take action, correct?
I don't think that would be a wise approach.
And then there's even a proposal to replace many of those 38,000 dedicated civil servants who work for the FBI, replace them with a MAGA group that has pledged its allegiance to Donald Trump. What danger would that bring?
What? What is he even talking about? Maybe
He's talking about how they think that they're going to replace with his supporters so that they're all going to be loyal to Donald Trump.
Okay. And is this part of Project 2025?
Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough. I'm not even going to address that. Moving on.
To the FBI if that were to happen?
Well, again, I haven't read or reviewed this thing that you're
assuming
referring
what
to.
I say is true.
But
that's a hell of an
the FBI is made up of 38,000 dedicated career law enforcement professionals. It has no political appointees of any kind unless you count me as a nominee of the former president.
Either,
I don't think that should change. I think that is
a bunch
that is
of MAGA
part of how we do our work.
Being being the employees of the FBI.
We're coming up on 116 years of the FBI, and that's the way it has been for 116
It would
years.
be crazy to take 38,000 MAGA loyalists and put them at the FBI. That's frightening. That's what Project 2025 proposes, and I'm glad to know that you are not with that program and with that.
Oh my God. Okay. All right.
We got through it.
Yeah, we barely got through it. All right. So look. Woo. I'm not even going to get into this. All right. This guy's a moron. Let's just move on. The next is Matt Gaetz, Republican from Florida. Here we go.
And I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Florida is recognized.
Was the shooter on the FBI's radar in any way prior to the assassination attempt?
Good question.
We did not have any information about the shooter. He was not in our holdings before the shooting.
No communication in any chat rooms, no CIs or confidential human sources have any interaction with?
No, we've run a thorough search for the subject through all of our holdings, and he was not in them anywhere.
Were there any FBI agents or informants present at the Trump rally in Butler?
Not to my knowledge.
5 words you pronounce wrong.
Mr. Jordan was talking to you about Iran. Were law enforcement resources diverted from the protection of President Trump to John Bolton as a consequence of concern that Mr. Bolton might have been the target of Iranian malign efforts?
Hold on. Fill me in on that. What?
Okay. Remember Iran or Trump when he was president, he killed the Iranian general
Soleimani, right?
Salami.
Salami?
I'm sorry, I can't say his name. How do you say it?
Soleimani.
Okay, yes, that guy.
I like salami better. I'm gonna start calling him General Salami.
But anyway, Iran has threatened to kill President Trump, Bolton, and Pompeo. So that's what he's referring to.
Gotcha. Okay.
That's really a Secret Service decision. I don't know the answer to that. That's really something they would know better. What I can tell you is that there are a number of individuals. You mentioned one who we've brought a case, a specific criminal case for the Iranians targeting for assassination. But how the
Are you gonna get that answer to us? Whether or not resources were diverted from Trump to Bolton? Is that just going to be part of your review?
I think that's going to be part of the reviews by the inspector general.
The Inspector General for DHS, right?
Of DHS,
Right,
and the outside panel.
And I think that's an important point because the Inspector General for DHS has really fallen out of favor with the administration because he's been pointing out all the problems on the border with Mayorkas and Biden, and we're always kind of worried that they're about to fire him, which would be a really bad idea now that this role that you've identified is so critical. Be a bad idea to fire the IG for DHS during the pendency of this, right, Mr. Director?
I don't think that would be a good idea.
I'm with you on that. So I want to zoom out a little bit. How often do you brief President Biden?
You mean on this specific case?
No, in your role as FBI director.
I mean, I don't know that I could give you a number.
Is it like weekly, monthly, daily?
It's not at a regular cadence. There have been times when there have been months at a time when I haven't, and then there have been times when several days apart I have. It's always with other people.
The vice president, is she typically there?
Often has been.
Okay, so when did you notice his decline?
In my interactions, in my role, all my interactions with the current president have been completely professional.
Right, but I mean the cognitive decline. I'm not saying he treated you unprofessionally, just maybe not picking things up as quickly as he used to.
Again, I don't meet with him very often, but what you're describing is not something that I've observed during my interactions with him.
I mean, we've had it observed so often that the ranking member and Mr. Schiff on this committee have said that he could no longer continue as a candidate. And so since you're the FBI director, I was just sort of wondering, like, who's running the country? Like if something bad happened, you'd have to go brief President Biden about it right now? God forbid?
And on any number of occasions, I have briefed the president. And as I said, those briefings have all been uneventful and unremarkable.
Oh, I can imagine them being uneventful. But in the work where the vice president's also present, like you say there's like more than half the time there's these briefings, she's there too?
I don't know if I said more than half the time. Certainly, there have been times where she's been present. There have been other times where she hasn't.
I take you at your word when you say this is the most complicated threat environment you've ever observed over a long career in law enforcement. And I'm just kind of wondering, with this assassination attempt, with the invasion at our border, with all the Hamas that have been let in that you've talked about and briefed about, like, is Biden up to it? And if he's not up to it, and you're a guy who's been regularly briefing him, like who's been in on this conspiracy to hide the real Joe Biden from all of us for years? It never occurred to you that this guy wasn't up to it in all these briefings you did?
As I said, my briefings with the president have all been completely fine.
Were they between 10 a.m. and 4
He's asked
p.m.?
questions. There hasn't been anything of note in the area that you're talking about.
Yeah, did you ever have to brief him before 10 a.m. or after 4 p.m.? We hear those are as good hours.
I certainly times that I have briefed have included outside those hours.
Right. Okay. I just, I think the American people want to know how we got to this point with someone who's so diminished, his own party has basically put him out to pasture. And since you had close proximity and the vice president had close proximity, I'm just kind of wondering if you were being straight with all of us about how things were going with him. I guess we'll have to figure that out.
You can count on me to be straight with you, sir.
We'll see.
Gentlemen, yield.
So, look, we're all worried about Joe Biden and his fitness for office, right? We are. I'm very concerned about it. But once again, we had someone die, 2 other people get seriously injured, and President Trump almost die. And this is what you're going to use your time to ask? I mean, I don't like it when either side does it. And that's why I got no problem calling out both sides for this kind of crap. All right. So next we have Biggs R from Arizona, and that is the 202.29 mark. I have a feeling we're going to have an ad. I'll do my best.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Director Wray, for being here. How many shots did the shooter fire?
Well, we know that he fired at least 8 because we recovered 8 cartridges on the roof.
Okay.
Okay. No, I'm just going to leave it alone.
And are all the cartridges and the unspent bullets, have they been, you know how many there are? You've accounted for all of those? I assume, yeah.
We believe we have. Again, there was lots of work still ongoing, but yes, we believe we have accounted.
And did the recovered shells, the cartridges, match the shooter's rifle?
My recollection is yes.
And you conducted analysis that confirms that?
Well, we work with ATF, but yes, so some of the work has been divided up. But.
And how many shells casings were recovered from the location of the counter snipers?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the last part.
From the counter snipers location?
That I don't have the answer, at least here at my fingertips.
Okay.
Isn't that weird?
That is weird.
Would
that is actually a really good question, and you don't know the answer to that?
Yeah, that's why I kept that clip.
That's very concerning that he doesn't know the answer offhand and be able to say one round or 2 or however many. It seems like pretty critical information that he should have.
That's what I thought too.
Did the blood and tissue pattern of the shooter, did it match the stories or the witness testimony that you've heard so far?
Can you, well, I'm not sure I'm following the question.
Well, I assume you've interviewed the counter snipers, or you have that evidence and other witnesses describing the kill of the shooter. And I'm wondering if the blood and tissue and brain matter is consistent with the testimony that you're receiving. In other words, is the physical...
In terms of the manner of death?
Exactly. Is the physical evidence consistent with where the shot from the counter sniper took place?
Yeah, so...
Okay, and there's a reason that he's asking this. I have seen multiple videos where they are interviewing crime scene analysts, emergency room doctors who make the claim, this is not me making the claim, but they make the claim that basically the pattern behind the shooter does not match a high velocity sniper round to the dome.
I see.
Now, that's for another time, and we will get into that at another point. But that's why he's asking this, I believe, is because there are multiple reports that things are not lining up.
So the autopsy is being handled by, as is not unusual, the state authorities. My understanding is thus far, I don't think it's fully complete, which is not, again, not totally unusual. But so far,
13 days.
Yeah, 2 weeks and you're not done with the autopsy? That's bull. That is horse shit. There's no reason it should take 2 freaking weeks to do an autopsy.
Yeah, that is really.
That's sketchy as hell.
nothing remarkable on that front.
That's from the body itself, but from actually the scene where the shooter was found, is everything consistent with the testimony, the physical evidence at the scene? Is that consistent with the testimony you've seen, that you've heard so far?
So far, yes. Again, ongoing investigation.
Were you able to determine whether the shooter took the gun up with him when he climbed up to the top of the roof, or was it already placed there somewhere?
So that is something that we're drilling into right now that we don't know the answer to yet. I can tell you, which may be relevant though to your question, that, and I don't think this has been reported yet, that the weapon had a collapsible stock, which could explain why it might have been less easy for people to observe, you know, because one of the things that we're finding is people have observed him, the first people to observe him with the weapon were when he was already on the roof, and we haven't yet found anybody with firsthand observation of him with the weapon walking around beforehand. So that doesn't mean he wasn't, obviously, but the collapsible stock is potentially a very significant feature that might be relevant to that.
Did he have
Okay. Collapsible stock. Now, is it a collapsible stock or is it a folding stock? Because they actually make stocks for AR style rifles that fold.
Is that,
and if you have a short barrel, for example, a folding stock can actually make the weapon, I mean, let's see, like about maybe this long in total. So it's easily concealable.
I see.
However, and I think there's a special like permit you have to have, like a pistol brace or something. I'm not sure about that part, but I do know for a fact that they make, I've seen commercials for them. I have friends who are shooters. They enjoy shooting, and they have all kinds of stuff that I really wish I had, but I don't, including collapsible, or I should say folding stock. Now, most half-ass decent stocks for AR are adjustable. You could call them collapsible because they go really short. But there's a difference between that and something that folds and it makes something significantly smaller. But that's a really good question. Was that up on the roof already? Or did he carry it up with him? If he did carry it up, how did he do so? Was it in a coat? He didn't look like he had like an overcoat or anything. He didn't have like a trench coat or anything that we saw. There's a lot of unanswered questions here.
The scope?
I believe so, but as I said, that is potentially a very significant feature that might be relevant to that.
Did he have a scope?
I believe so, but as I sit here right now, I don't remember.
Okay. You mentioned about 2 hours.
How can you not remember
exactly
if the rifle they're saying was responsible for the death of a man, the injury of 2, and the attempted assassination of Donald Trump? You don't know in front of Congress offhand whether the rifle had an optic.
I think he's
all of these dudes, that's all they do. Women, men, allegedly, investigation still ongoing.
Hours before the incident that
Horseshit.
that he'd had a drone and he was using a drone. Instead of me putting words in your mouth, just tell me how you discovered the drone, how you discovered the time.
What is this? Like, I'm looking, I don't think this is it, but it looks like a half moon pendant with something, but I think it's like two things laid on top of each other. I'd be interested in like looking into what that is. I'm just curious because it's interesting.
I didn't even notice that.
And what
You like to look around.
If you can describe what
I don't
he
know.
would have been observing with the drone and how you determined that, please.
So this is something that's very much ongoing right now. We're going back and forth with our lab as they continue to do work on it. What I would say is the drone was in his car. As I said, we've been able to, by exploiting the drone, determine, its use and flight paths. There were no pictures or videos on the drone of the day of the rally, for example, but we have been able to reverse engineer the flight path of the drone from the day of the rally. And that's how we know that for about 11 minutes from, I think it's around 3:50 p.m. to 4 p.m., somewhere in that range, he was flying the drone, and we have the flight path. It's about 200 yards away from where former President Trump would ultimately be speaking. And so that would have primarily given him a vantage point. I'm trying to think how to describe this. If the former president's podium is that way,
yeah,
the drone would be over here looking, say 200 yards again off this way, looking back. So it would have shown the shooter, we think. Again, we're still doing more work on this. I really want to qualify what I'm saying, but I'm trying to be transparent and lean in here. We think it would have shown him kind of what would have been behind him.
But when you say behind him, behind the shooter.
Correct. Like, in other words, almost like giving him a rear view mirror of the scene behind him, except again, he wasn't flying it overhead while he was later back for the assassination.
But he would have had, with the drone, he would have been able to also assess kind of what, because the stage, I assume, was already set. He would have been able to assess that angle with the rooftop as well, forward and backward, I assume.
Well, certainly going towards the podium. Again, we're still trying to figure out exactly what he saw, because we're having to, in effect, because there's no recording of what he saw during those 11 minutes, our hypothesis at this point, the experts think he would have been live streaming it. And so we're trying to, in effect, say, okay, if this was the flight pattern, given these capabilities of the drone, what would you have seen? What could you have seen for those 11 minutes? And again, it wasn't over the stage or the kind of the hub of the rally. It's about 200 yards away, but it looks like it would have been looking, let's say, length of a football field or so, more, kind of towards the podium.
Great.
So where he was, the vantage point he had, the sniper perch, the roof, whatever, that area and behind is where they're saying the drone was looking towards the podium or behind. They're not sure. They're still figuring that out because it's an ongoing investigation. Okay. Next is Jordan again. Picks up right now, and it is 208.54 to 209.43.
Thank you, Mr.
How many separate times was the shooter on the premises?
Good question.
So again, with the caveat that we're continuing to do work on it, we believe that the first time he traveled to the grounds was, I think, a week before, and he spent roughly 20 minutes there. Then he went to the grounds again on the morning of the event, it appears, for about 70 minutes, I think. But again, I qualify that. I'd have to go back and look to be sure of that part. And then he came back in the afternoon. So that would be, I guess, a third time for good. But that included things like this drone activity we just talked about.
So he was there 3 times, one a week or so prior. Basically, what I'm guessing is when they found out where it's going to be, he went and scoped it out. Then the morning of the rally, he was there. Then that afternoon, he was there. Nobody thought this was weird. Nobody thought this was interesting. Secret Service really dropped the ball on this. So our next clip is Thomas Massey, who has returned to Congress since the death of his wife. It's 2:27:50 to 2:34:02, approximately 5 minutes.
See if it's
Belong to you, Congressman.
Thank you, Chairman. Director Wray, how many counter snipers were present at the rally that day, and which of the counter snipers took the shot that took out the would-be assassin?
Good question.
I don't have the number of counter snipers. I know it was the Secret Service counter sniper who took.
How could you not have that information 13 days after, 2 weeks after this cluster? You still don't know how many counter snipers were on location?
And that's information that we could know. That's not like something that you need to hide. That's what's the weird thing.
There's no reason to obfuscate that information other than lack of transparency for the American people.
Took the shot that eliminated the shooter. And we've conducted a number of interviews, including of him.
So was it one of the two that we see in the videos on top of the roof, or was it a different location that was shot?
I'm afraid I don't have that at my fingertips here.
Okay. You mentioned that the would-be assassin bought a 5-foot ladder. You have a credit card evidence of that, but it looks like on the scene there was a larger ladder that he might have used. Do you know which ladder he used to get to the roof? And do you have possession of that 5-foot ladder and the other ladder? And do you know how the taller ladder got to the scene?
That is an exceptional question.
So this whole business about the ladder is something we're drilling into more. We do have possession of the.
That's something.
It's something we're drilling into more. Ongoing investigation. I have no intention of telling you anything of note. What?
5-foot ladder that he purchased close in time to his attempted assassination. That we've traced the purchase of that ladder from a receipt, a bloodied receipt that he had on him at the time his body was recovered on the roof. We do not yet know for sure how exactly he got up on the roof. We're looking at, various forensic pieces to try to kind of piece that together. So more to come on that.
We're not sure how he got on the roof, despite there being a ladder there that's not a 5-foot ladder, even though we have proof that he bought a 5-foot ladder. The ladder that he actually climbed, we believe, to get up on the roof, even though we're not willing to say that's what happened. Did he teleport up there? Was he picked up by a really big drone and dropped up there?
Good question.
Dude, bruh.
Do you know where the 5-foot ladder was found or retrieved? Was it near the roof, or was it still in his vehicle?
Neither. I don't have it in front of me, but I know that it was not. I know that it was not on scene, and I know that it was not in his vehicle.
Dude, this is the most ridiculous crap I have ever heard in my life. We don't know. I can't tell you right now where we found it, but I'll tell you it wasn't in his vehicle and it wasn't on scene. So what does that mean? Where was it then? Was it floating? He said he recovered it. They recovered it, so it's not missing. This is intentional. There's no way that this is not intentionally misleading, or I should say dodging. He hasn't specifically lied as such, other than saying, well, I don't have that information in front of me. I don't have that information in front of me. I'm not sure. Oh, yeah, I can't recall. We heard a lot of that. I can't recall from Cheadle, the former Secret Service director, right?
Yeah.
But we can circle back to you and get to that.
Circle back.
Is there any evidence at all that he may have been in contact with somebody else before this occurred that may have had any prior knowledge or may have helped him plan this event?
Well, needless to say, that is a question that we're intensely focused on because that would obviously be incredibly meaningful. So far, underline, so far, we have not found any evidence of any accomplices or co-conspirators, foreign or domestic.
And you're using geolocation data to see if his cell phone was near another cell phone, I presume?
Right, we're doing lots of different kinds of cellular analysis, geolocation stuff, looking at his accounts. He, from everything we've seen, which is consistent with what we've learned in interviews, a lot of people describe him as a loner. That does kind of fit with what we're seeing in his.
Isn't it always convenient, right? I'm just going to say, I'm not saying that this is inaccurate, right? But isn't it always convenient how these shooters are loners, are killed at the scene or shortly thereafter, and never had any help? Now, if they didn't have any help at all, then that means the Secret Service should be disbanded. And they need to start over. Because this is the most egregious security failure of my life. Reagan, then this. Come on, man. And Reagan was in transit from somewhere else.
Yeah.
I mean, he left here and went to here. He was leaving somewhere.
I think he was in a conference. He went to a conference.
Yeah, but he was walking out to the car, right? This should have been a completely secured scene.
Yeah.
There's no reason this should have happened at all. Unreal, man.
Devices, his list of contacts, for example, is very short, compared to what you would normally see from most people. So it doesn't appear to be a whole lot of interaction between him, face to face or
it's a burner phone.
Digital with a lot of people.
Okay, thank you.
That doesn't mean there's not any, and that's why we're drilling into. We're trying to talk to anybody who's had any engagement with him whatsoever, digital, in person, classmates, coworkers,
right,
et cetera.
Appreciate that.
I wonder, are they talking to BlackRock since he was in their commercial? I mean, they had interaction with him.
True.
I mean, I have heard, and I'm not saying this is accurate, but I have heard that he had a unique relationship with BlackRock, and that they are far more deeply involved than we are being told. I don't have any evidence of that right now. I'm working on it. But if I can bring that kind of evidence, I will definitely let you know.
And now I want to talk about another possible assassination attempt. And I'll start by showing a video of President Biden. And this is from recently. This is in the last month, if we can play that.
Gallows erected to hang the Vice President, Mike Pence. I think it's fair to say it's one of the darkest days in the history of America.
That didn't happen, by the way.
No.
There were no gallows erected to hang Pence. That did not happen. It was a display, and it was to make a statement. I'm not saying it was okay, but the shoddy, it would not have held someone actually being hung. It would have fallen apart. It was a prop. Again, I'm not saying it's okay, but I certainly understand the sentiment.
Okay, and he's referring to January 6th. Were there gallows erected to hang Mike Pence, as the president says here?
I'm not aware of any physical gallows. I can't remember whether from a demonstration perspective, there may not have been some kind of replica or symbol of something like that.
That's my impression. Can we show, can you raise that up so you can see it? It looks like there was some kind of prop that was built. The construction doesn't look like it lends itself to actually hanging somebody. It's more of a...
And I don't see Pence's name anywhere on that. I'm just saying, I will say this. I do believe there are traitors in our government. And if you are a traitor to this country, you should have the death penalty. I think that was the point of this.
Prop, I think, that you suggested, that was erected on January 6th. But if the president were correct that these gallows were erected to hang Mike Pence, that would be a very serious allegation, wouldn't it?
Yes.
I would take it very seriously,
Yeah.
yes.
Has anybody been arrested, or do you have any leads in conjunction with the erection of this gallows? We had a picture here on the screen, if you can show it again. It was just up there. There's an individual here who's seen on near these gallows. Has he been arrested? Have you identified this person?
You know, I don't know that I could speak to this specific person or the gallows that are pictured on the image. You know, we have had, I think, 850 people who have pled guilty to federal crimes related to January 6th. And I think, you know, another 180, I think it is, convicted at trials. So I can't be sure.
And some of them merely for going into the Capitol. But here, the president suggests that individual intended to hang Vice President Pence, which seems like kind of a wild claim myself, given the construction of those gallows. But if we are to take him seriously, or even if we aren't, let me just finish by saying this. If you have no leads, or you're not sure if anybody who erected those gallows was arrested or is being investigated, you know, were there any confidential human sources involved from the FBI or any other agency in the erection of that prop, those gallows?
I'm not aware of anything like that.
All right. Thank you. I yield.
Okay. So allegedly, well, saying I'm not aware of anything like that is not the same as no.
True.
So just say that. And I think the reason he's asking is because what we've heard about this Ray Epps guy. I don't know how familiar you are with the name Ray Epps.
Name sounds familiar.
Okay, so what the claim is that Ray Epps was an FBI informant, or at least some intelligence agency informant, that was on scene and was actually responsible for inciting much of the crowd. He, the best of my understanding, got away with just about everything, as opposed to some of the other individuals. For a very long time, he didn't even have any charges on him when he was directly involved, whereas some people are serving a considerable amount of time for walking through the Capitol. That's all I'm saying. All right, our next clip, let's see here, is Rep. Tiffany from Wisconsin, 239-48.
For that role. I appreciate your indulgence, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Gentleman from Wisconsin's recognized.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it was when you were here December of last year, Mr. Wray, that you said blinking lights were going off in regards to the southern border and what is happening down there. Has the border situation improved in terms of your...
He's meaning that he's seen warning signs of possible attack everywhere.
Oh, okay, all right.
Assessment with the security of Americans since you were last here in December?
Okay.
Well, I guess a couple things, and I appreciate the question. So first, the blinking lights comment that I made refers more broadly to the threat environment that I'm seeing as FBI director across a wide range of threats. Contributing to that in a variety of ways are the threats that emanate from the border. So it's not a comment just on the border issues. It's the threat environment that we face more broadly, in my experience in law enforcement. I am increasingly concerned that foreign terrorists could seek to exploit vulnerabilities at our southwest border or at other ports of entry or in other aspects of our immigration system to facilitate an attack here in the United States.
I want to say this real quick because I've seen a number of news stories lately about veterans who served our country for citizenship being deported. I don't know if you've seen these.
No, I haven't.
There are multiple. That I'm going to do a story on that coming up. But it's very, very concerning to me when we have millions of illegals allowed into our country, given food, given resources, given luxury hotel rooms, in some cases flown in on nice jets. And we have people who busted their ass, put their life on the line to serve this country in order to receive citizenship, and they're being kicked out of the country. That's some bullshit.
That's
absolute ridiculous. Should never, ever happen.
No.
But it's happening. There's so many things that are happening. It's hard to stay on top of everything. But that's one of the reasons why we do this.
I think that is something we have to be concerned about. There's been a lot of focus on numbers of this, numbers of that, and I understand that. But as I think was referenced in an earlier question, it doesn't take very many foreign terrorists to be a real problem. We had 19.
Yeah, that's funny how that works. All you need is a handful of individuals that are able to wreak serious damage, and we have millions and millions and millions of unvetted here.
Yeah,
many
scary
foreign terrorists to be a real problem. We had 19 hijackers responsible for the 9/11 attacks. And we just not that long ago had a case, some of the members of the committee will remember, where we charged an individual for trying to smuggle individuals in to assassinate former President Bush.
Are you concerned that the Border Patrol chief, former Border Patrol chief Rodney Scott, said that he was concerned about very, very minuscule data that they were receiving? So there's all this, we are told that illegal aliens are vetted against databases, but oftentimes they're doing biometrics as they come into this country, but not looking behind it in their home countries. Does that concern you when there's not a review done in the home country?
Well, we certainly need as much help as we can get from the countries of origin of these people. And when I say origin, not just where they come from originally, but countries they've come through. And the biometric enrollment piece is, of course, an important one. We have situations where even if...
Are we doing a thorough enough job of reviewing them, their actions and their lives in their home countries before they came here?
Well, I mean, we need more help from our foreign partners. There's no question about that. And I think that's an important part of it.
How about our domestic partners like the CIA and others that are supposed to protect us?
So there's been a lot of discussion, of course, over the last several years about the pivot to what's called the hard targets, right? The understandable focus, which I support, of focusing on the threat posed by China and Russia and Iran. But with that comes, if you look at, for example, the withdrawal from Afghanistan, we start to lose sources of information about foreign terrorist threats from overseas, and that is a concern to me.
Okay, so what he's saying is when we pulled out of Afghanistan, we lost a whole bunch of intel.
Yep.
Yeah, especially because this so-called administration screwed it up so badly. We lost some of our most important, valuable intel from the individuals that were there. Yeah.
My time's running out. Has Vice President Harris met with you in regards to the border?
Well, I've been in meetings that have included the Vice President that have in different ways touched on border
Has she
issues.
specifically asked you for a meeting in regards to the threat that is at the border?
You know, I'm not going to get into sort of specific meetings, but I can tell you that I've been in meetings that have included, among other people, the Vice President that touch on border security issues.
Did she?
That touch on border security issues, not that are the focus of, not that focus on, not, you know, any of that part of.
She asked you questions about what you thought needed to be done in regards to reducing this threat to the American people?
You know, I really can't get into specific conversations.
Really? Because I thought you were planning on being open and transparent and honest. I don't, unless you're discussing specific classified information, which you wouldn't be, in simply relaying, yes, they asked me about that. I provided the best answer that I could under the circumstances. Okay. It's very telling that he won't answer.
Yeah.
That he won't say yes or no.
Is support for President Trump a security concern within the FBI?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear it.
Is support for President Trump a security concern amongst your employees?
No.
Is objection to the COVID-19 vaccine a security threat?
Not from my perspective.
Who improved what is termed the Trump questionnaire within the FBI that was done by SIIS? Dina Perkins, Jeffrey Ventry were behind it.
Gina Perkins, isn't she involved in Perkins and Coy? Is that the same?
I think
Perkins?
I think it is.
If you guys don't remember, Perkins Coy, however you say Coy, was the law firm, right? That, or some sort of group, not sure if they were a law firm or not, but I think they were, that was involved with Hillary Clinton and the DNC in the past, I believe. Fact check that, double check. I'm not the arbiter of truth. Do your own research. But if my memory serves me, they are at least fairly connected to those two.
Who was responsible for that? And did you know that there was a Trump questionnaire out there?
So the document you're asking about is an interview outline that we only recently learned about, and in my view is completely inappropriate. I asked my team to get to the bottom of what happened and to ensure that doesn't happen again. And I've learned that it's not an FBI form, that its use was isolated, that it was created not by an FBI employee, but by an outside contractor. And that individual is no longer affiliated with the FBI. We are sending what we have found to the Office of Inspector General and we'll cooperate, of course, with anything they.
Mr. Chairman, I'll just close with this. We keep hearing about these isolated examples, whether it's Richmond Catholics, this instance. When is it, isn't it a pattern? I yield back.
I just want to ask you guys this, and you make up your own minds. Is it concerning to you that a group can put out such a questionnaire where they rate your security, I guess, value or threat of security based on your political affiliation and your belief or opposition to a mandated vaccination? And the FBI director claims he didn't know. They recently found out after it went viral. Does that bother you? Because it bothers the hell out of me. It tells me that our agencies are in deep, deep trouble. And that's why when I read things like, for example, Project 2025, and they say the FBI director should report to the president, I'm not immediately like, that's a terrible idea. I'm like, this deserves to be talked about. I'm not saying I'm for it, but I certainly think it's a more complex question than the Democrats make it out to be. All right, our next clip, we're almost done, just so you guys know. We're almost done. Our next clip picks up from right here, and this is Representative Correa, Democrat from California, and it's about 5 minutes.
Gentleman goes back, Mr. Correa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Director Wray, welcome again to this committee, and I want to thank you and your agents for good job you're doing to protect Americans.
Yeah, phenomenal job.
Earlier this week, I was part of the group that went out to visit Butler, Pennsylvania Homeland Security members. I agree with my colleagues that have said violence has no part in our democracy. And I trust you will investigate the events surrounding July 13th thoroughly. I'm going to ask you a question.
Bless you.
Hope you keep it in mind as your investigation proceeds, which is, who's in charge? Who's in charge at a campaign rally, setting it up?
It's a good question.
Secret Service or a campaign? And I ask this question because when I was there, had a couple of law enforcement individuals alluding to that question as well. Mm-hmm. They gave me an example. They said, if a Secret Service says you need to set up a line of dump trucks behind the stage to serve to protect the candidate, and the campaign says that's bad optics, who ends up winning the debate?
That's a good question. Who is in charge? I think that's a valid question. I don't think the FBI director is the one that should be asked that question. I think it's Secret Service,
but they wouldn't answer it.
Yeah, exactly. They don't answer anything. But it's actually a good question. Who should be in charge? We know that Secret Service does the best they can, but ultimately, I do believe that anybody can go, yeah, we're not doing that. At least the protectee. I don't know, though, which is why it's a good question.
So my question is, who's in charge? And as you investigate this crime scene, hope you ask the locally elected officials. I spoke to a county supervisor, local police and sheriff. They all had information they wanted us to know, to relay. We just didn't have the opportunity to sit down and talk to them. There was a lot of concern.
Wait a minute. So they went out there, and according to him, there were people who wanted them to know information, and instead of sitting down and listening to them, what? You didn't? Because you didn't have time? It's been 2 weeks. You couldn't find time in your busy schedule to get the information they had regarding the potential, the almost assassination and the death and injury of multiple people. You couldn't find time in your busy ass schedule for that? What a freaking joke, man. These people all need to be replaced, with the exception maybe of Massey and
Rand
Paul. Yeah, that's almost like maybe a couple other ones. But in general, all these people suck. Both sides of the aisle.
We need term limits.
Oh my
That they weren't given enough time to prepare for this rally. They thought there were things that could have been done better. And ultimately, what I keep thinking, what I keep coming back to is question, who's in charge at these rallies? I think it's an important one because we have an election right around the corner. Pennsylvania, Butler, these areas, battleground states around the country will continue to be areas where our candidates, both sides, will show up, and the threats will continue to be there. So I hope, Director Wray, that you'll keep that statement in mind as you continue to investigate this crime scene.
Well, I appreciate the question. I will tell you that we've conducted well over 400 interviews, but we have many more still to conduct. And as is not unusual in an investigation, I'm sure there will be situations where we have to go back to people we've already interviewed with follow-up questions. And our interviews cover a wide range of people. I do think it's important to make sure that the committee and the American people understand the scope of our investigation versus the scope of others. Our investigation is focused on the shooter and his attack. There is, of course, and I understand completely why, there are two separate reviews, one by the DHS Inspector General and the other by this outside independent panel that's been announced, that are focused on the security posture, the adequacy of the security posture at the rally, Secret Service decision-making and actions and things like that. And so I certainly understand why there are all those questions. But those are in scope of those two other reviews. And of course, whatever, Congress chooses to do. Our investigation, though, because of our interviews of people who are on the scene, will relate to that in some ways. And we're going to share whatever we learn that's relevant with those other reviews.
Director Wray, my last minute that I have, I'm going to flip quickly to your good job resources. Earlier this year in the Appropriations Committee, you testified that you were, for 2024, your budget was $500 million below what you needed to sustain your 2023 efforts. A few minutes ago, you talked about foreign terrorists. The last few weeks, I know information has emerged. That information came from FISA information that was able to be collected overseas on these possible terrorist threats. What we have here today is a domestic terrorist, what looks to be a lone wolf. Your statements, there's nothing really there that would have tipped anybody off to this individual.
Okay.
Is that what I'm hearing from you?
Well, I don't know that I'd go quite that far because we're still investigating a lot related to the shooter. It does appear so far that we're seeing less in his...
My 6 seconds, I would just say, I would ask that you let us know what resources you need to protect the American public and our candidates in our democratic system.
I appreciate the question. I would just say this. We are in, as I've said consistently today and for quite some time now, we are in an elevated threat environment covering a wide range of threats. And the FBI is central to protecting the American people from those threats. And state and local law enforcement, who depend on us every day, rely on us for all sorts of services, databases, forensic support, training. I could go on and on and on. And a lot of those departments, unlike the FBI, have had a hard time recruiting. And so this is not a time to pull back on our funding because we're going to leave our brothers and sisters in state and local law enforcement twisting in the wind. And then by extension, the American people we're all collectively sworn to protect.
Thank you. And Mr. Chair, I yield.
So they're $500 million short of the money that they say they need. There's 38,000 employees, databases and testing and all the things that the FBI allegedly do, including training officers, right? But they're $500 million short, they claim, on their budget. If we were able to spend trillions of dollars on bullshit and send hundreds of millions of dollars overseas, why is the FBI not being funded properly?
Do you want to know what their budget was for 2023?
Yeah, what was the
Congress
budget?
gave them $10.8 billion.
Almost $11 billion the FBI had in 2023.
Yeah.
And now they're saying they're $500 million short on funding for 2024, right? Dude,
I should see what it was for 2024.
all right. So I think I have to go back and get the right link because I accidentally closed it, I believe. But just take me a second. So once again, we're told, give us more money, give us more money, give us more money, and everything will be a-okay. Give us more money. That's all you have to do.
They believe that money is the answer for everything.
Well, of course, because to them, that's all that matters. I mean, anyway. All right. So here we have our final clip. This is it. We're almost done. I told you. And bear in mind that the entirety of the hearing was like almost 6 hours.
Yep.
So they actually had to do 2 separate videos in order to do the entirety of the hearing. But this is Representative Kiley, Democrat from California.
Republican.
I
think it's a Republican.
You
I'm pretty sure. It's a Republican.
Okay.
I screwed up.
It happens. No worries. Okay. Representative Kiley, Republican from California. Yes, they do exist. They're a endangered species at this point, but there are a few left. All right. So this is the last clip that we have for you guys, and then we'll chat for just a short period, and then we'll call it. It would help if I unmuted it.
Did the assassin's bullet come to killing?
All right, here we go.
Director Wray, to the best of your understanding, how close did the assassin's bullet come to killing President Trump?
Consider this your sign to stock up on signage. Because right now at Vistaprint, all signs are 20%.
But it's easier if I just do that. There we go.
My understanding is that either it or some shrapnel is what grazed his ear. So I don't know that.
And there is a consistent. That's the consistent message from the left. Oh, it wasn't a bullet. It was shrapnel from the teleprompter. It was shrapnel from the teleprompter. Those that even admit that there was damage to Trump, because there's blue anon claims that the blood from his ears actually catch up, and it just gets so ridiculous. But here we go.
But I have the
Very,
actual
very
distance.
close, though.
What's that?
Very, very close, you would agree.
Yes.
Is this the biggest security failure that you've seen in your career?
Simple answer, yes.
Ooh. Well, certainly, I think former Director Cheadle has already, I think, acknowledged that this was a significant, at the very least, a significant operational failure. I forgot her exact words, but I will defer on that. I think
We really
it speaks
haven't
for
seen
itself.
anything like this in at least decades in this country, right?
The attempted assassination of a president, current or former, is a historic event.
Was this a sophisticated plot that Thomas Crooks carried out?
Well, I think probably depends on your definition of sophisticated, right? So on the one hand, he's a 20-year-old, seems to, from what we've seen so far, loner, without a lot of elaborate criminal history, without any criminal history or anything like that. On the other hand, he did clearly do some level of planning and recon.
When did the planning start, to the best of your knowledge?
What's that?
When did the planning start?
Well, we're still drilling into that, but we assess that on July 6th,
so a week in advance.
for example, it seems to be that he seems to become very focused on it, because that's when, as I've testified here today, that's when the laptop that we've tied to him has the Google search, how far away was Oswald from Kennedy?
I mean, that seems like an indication of a total amateur, right? Someone who's searching for that, and he's doing it a week in advance.
Again, I don't want to characterize him. I frankly don't want to give him the credit of characterizing him as amateur or professional. But what I will say is that there are some things he did that involve a certain amount of planning and preparation. On the other hand, if you're telling me, do I think this is the most sophisticated ever? Of course not. We deal with much more sophisticated adversaries all the time.
You probably prepare for more sophisticated plans to target high-level officials.
I'm sorry, could you?
probably prepare for more sophisticated plans to target high-level officials, correct?
We don't do physical security, but yes, obviously we're investigating much more sophisticated attacks all the time.
How about the encrypted applications on his phone? Were those there for a while, or did he download them, in the days or weeks leading up to the assassination attempt?
I don't have the answer to that sitting here right now. I think it may vary from platform to platform, because he had a number of encrypted messaging apps on it. And again, as I've said, we're trying to get access to that content. And that's important. I think it's important for everybody on this committee to understand that this is a real problem for law enforcement, that these companies, let's be clear here, these companies are designing their platforms in a way to, no matter how heinous the crime, no matter how rock solid the legal process,
I'm run out of
to
time,
get
so I
access.
want to get the next question. At this moment, are you confident that high-level protectees, presidents, former presidents, are well protected?
I'm going to pause it here real quick, because there is a very serious balance that has to be struck between right to privacy and criminal investigation. So this is another conversation, much longer at another time, but it's an interesting point. At what level is your right to privacy more important than criminal investigative procedures to get into, say, a shooter's phone, right? It's something to think about, and it's something to discuss.
Well, it's not really for me to say. I have a lot of respect for the men and women of the Secret Service who provide.
And I just want to say, I am a 100% free speech absolutist. I believe in our right to privacy above all. We should always have more power than the government, but it's still an interesting conversation to have.
Protection, just as I do for their counterparts at other agencies.
You can't say one way or the other. Your assessment as director of the FBI whether the president is safe?
Right.
I'm not an expert on protective details and physical security. What I would tell you is that we have a very robust system for sharing threat information with those agencies, and that in my experience, the men and women of the Secret Service are professionals who are hardworking, who are literally willing to take a bullet for their protectee.
You mentioned a thwarted assassination attempt against former President Bush. Are there any other thwarted assassination attempts against current or former presidents that you could discuss?
Not that immediately come to mind, but, I'd have to go back and think about that. I mean, obviously we've been around for a while, and current and former presidents are high-profile targets who are attractive to all kinds of bad guys.
That was too broad of a question. It really was. I think he should have picked. I understand they have very limited time, but that was way too easy to dive. There should have been a specific question.
There's also been reports that the shooter's parents called local law enforcement to say he was missing on the day of the shooting. Is that correct? And if so, is that something that you would see as a sort of a natural thing for them to do? It seems like a 20-year-old who's been missing for a few hours. Maybe his parents don't, first thing they do, call the police. What was going on with that situation?
Now, I want to say this, allegedly, right? Because I haven't been able to verify this, but I have heard that the other individual that we thought was the shooter initially, Matthew Yerix or somebody Yerix, he was reported missing on the same day, allegedly, right? There's some weird stuff here. And interestingly enough, he has close facial features to the shooter, or at least who they're telling us the shooter is. I haven't been up on that roof. I haven't looked at the body. I don't know, right? I try to present information that I know. And I know that we're not being told the full story. That's all I can say for sure. Obviously, because they keep dodging questions.
Mm-hmm.
What the ultimate end result is, your guess is as good as mine. But there are some very interesting threads that I think should be followed.
Situation. First thing they do, call the police. What was going on with that situation?
So my recollection, I don't have this in front of me. My recollection is they did call, concerned that he was missing. My recollection, though, is that they didn't call until this was after I think this was after the event. But I'm not certain of that, so I want to, hedge on that slightly because I have to get back to you to confirm that. I believe that part of the issue was that when he last saw his father, he, I think, indicated to his father that he was going to shoot at the range. And then, of course, he didn't go to the range and he didn't come back from that. And so I think that may have added to the level of concern.
Thank you. I yield back.
Gentlemen, yield.
Okay. Really quickly, I saw some comments that presented what I think are far better questions than the ones that we heard, or at least a few much better questions. Let me show you the comments on this video. I don't remember part 1 or 2, but if you look here, this person says political grandstanding caused so many questions not asked or not answered. 1, could the shooter have been groomed, aka trained to do this? 2, could the shooter have been instructed to buy the 5-foot ladder that has not been found, while a taller ladder was found on site but not used or needed? That's a good question. Number 3, have you heard the ballistics audio and reviewed the 3 analysis reports showing 2 shooters? I have heard of this. I have not seen this, but I have heard that multiple, apparently as many as 3, ballistics audio experts reviewed the audio of the shots and concluded that there were, and we're not talking about the counter sniper bullet, right? We're talking about the entirety of the multiple shots that were happening, sans the counter shot, right? Or in addition to the counter shot, that multiple audio experts have concluded there were multiple shooters. Now, this lines up with what we were told by witnesses at the scene. You remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Have you reviewed the report from 2023 where one of the shooter's phone was at or near FBI offices in DC? That's the first I've heard of that.
Yeah.
Very interesting. 4, did anyone collect air and residue samples from the second floor open windowed room behind the roof shooter? Those are good questions. Well done. Let's see. Let's get her name right. Vicky at Vicky Lindsay 4499 at Vicky Lindsay 4499. Shout out to her, him, whomever. Well done. These are the kinds of questions that should be asked. And instead, we're getting questions about Project 2025 and other crap. And both sides. I want to make it perfectly clear. Both sides were doing stupid stuff instead of trying to get to the bottom of this. So it's sad. And my hearts and my prayers go out to the family of Corey Comparatori.
Yep.
And I don't have the names of the 2 that were injured offhand. I'm sorry, I don't remember them, but
to them too.
To them too. It must be difficult to hear these news reports that say almost happened or came so close to happening or when their loved one was killed or injured. Something didn't almost happen. Something did happen, at least to them. So I want to make that clear. That said, this entire thing's a dog and pony show. I want to know what's happening. I want to know the answers that are given. That's why I will tell you the vast majority of this stuff is just circle, circle, circle around. That's why I greatly appreciate Shawn for going through this and giving us the minimum he can to convey the necessary information. So we really appreciate that. We'll see you guys again soon. I'll probably be doing a couple of shows myself coming up over the next few days. Not sure what his schedule is yet for coming back on, but the next time he's on, we're going to do the review of the local police.
The state police.
The state police who were called in front of Congress.
Yep.
And we'll ask some very, very serious questions. And once again, we didn't get all the answers we wanted, but a lot of times the dodging and the answers they do give tell us a lot. And that, I think that was the case with this. We really saw some interesting responses in this hearing. Not just this one, but the other one that we're going to have. If you guys haven't seen, we have we've done this multiple times on Supreme Court cases and other things. Hope you enjoy it, and we got a lot of stuff coming up for you. We have our guest. I don't have the date in front of me, but we have someone who was actually pretty instrumental with the homeschool, charter school, stuff like that here in the state of Indiana. And they're going to be on the show coming up in, I think, a week or so, a week and a half. I'll let you guys know for sure. I have the date, but it's on my phone. My phone is being used right now. So it is what it is. But ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. We will talk to you again very, very soon. As always, God bless you. God bless Indiana. And God bless the United States of America. And I would like to say God bless the families of the victims of July 13th, including, but certainly not limited to, Donald Trump, his family, Corey Comparatori, his family, and the family of the injured. That's it. I hope you have a great night, and we will see you again very, very soon. Good evening.
If you'd like to support the show, please visit our Patreon at patreon.com/Dion's Daily Dose. This has been Dion's Daily Dose, hosted by Dion Bergeron. Executive producers, Shawn Holmgren and Michael Beebe. Copyright 2024. Dion's Daily Dose, all rights reserved.